Hi everyone, I'm Sean with Entering Pawtucket. Recently, I sat down with Mayor Donald Grebien, who is seeking another term as mayor, for a one-on-one interview to give him an opportunity to speak directly to the people of Pawtucket about the issues that matter most. This isn't intended to be a hard-hitting political interview or debate. I'm not a professional journalist. I'm a Pawtucket resident who cares deeply about our city, our neighborhoods, our public safety, our environment, and our quality of life. My goal is simple: to give voters an opportunity to hear directly from the candidate in their own words so they can make a more informed decision. The interview is about 30 minutes long and covers a variety of topics. I've included timestamps in the description so you can easily jump to the topics that interest you most. As with my interview with Adam Greenman that many of you saw, Mayor Grebien received the same invitation, approximately the same interview length, and many of the same core topics. Some questions differ because, as the incumbent mayor, he has a record in office that voters can evaluate. I hope you take away something from this interview that can help you make a better, more informed decision. Thank you. We're here today with Mayor Donald Grebien. Mayor, thank you for taking the time to meet with us today.
Sean, thanks for having me. It's a good opportunity to, talk to you and talk to the folks out there.
So we're going to start off today just by a little getting to know you. Mayor, you served as the mayor of Pawtucket for several years. Looking back, what accomplishments are you most proud of?
It's hard to say. So first of all, thanks for the opportunity. And being born and raised here is important. And so when you look back and you think about how the city has changed through the years, when I started 16 years ago, we were in the brink of bankruptcy, and we were able to fight our way through. We went through the pension changes. We went through COVID. We've seen all these challenges, and yet people of Pawtucket and the city are resilient. So one of the biggest priorities and the things I'm happiest about is really truly like the economic development. The community that's the big picture stuff, like all the accomplishments, the housing we're doing, the stadium, but it really comes down to the smaller stuff where the quality of life matters to folks. And so, we've gone through some tough decisions where we had to change over and privatize our trash, but it was about equipment, safety, and better services. So those are the things.
What motivated you to seek another term?
So there are a lot of things, but what I think really has been motivated is, again, I said, I'm born and raised here. I've seen the ups and downs, and we've been able over the last 16 years, but even the last few, change from financial stress. We've invested in our communities. We see the economic development. We see the investment in our schools, and Pawtucket is really changing. And I'm really proud of that. So, you sit there and you still have the energy. I still have the energy. I said, I probably don't have as much as I did 16 years ago. In some ways I was very heavy before, so I lost some weight, so I get a little bit of energy back. But you have that energy, and it's the passion for the community, right? It's the passion for the folks. And again, having been born here, you see the changes. So I know what it's been, where we are, and where we need to go.
If someone had just 30 seconds in the voting booth, why should they vote to re-elect you?
I can't do it in 30 seconds, but I'll be... No, I really think if you look back and you see how far Pawtucket has come and where we're going and all the successes, we have so much more to do, but we've invested in our school. We see the brand new high school that's going to be developed and open in 2 years. You look at an underutilized waterfront, and you see that, and people know that. Like the people I talk to on a daily basis, whether it's in the office, on the street, and actually during campaign season, we're on the doors even more so. But people really care about this community. They're proud about the accomplishments, and they understand all of the success that we've had.
And you spoke of the waterfront. From what I'm understanding, there's going to be a pedestrian bridge that's going to connect the Rhode Island FC Centerville Bank Stadium.
Yeah, Centerville Stadium.
So could you just give us a little bit more about that if you can?
Yeah. So, it's about preserving, it's an underutilized waterfront. Mm-hmm. And so now we have a stadium, we have all of the green, the bikeway. We've got the $4 million. We're doing the bikeway on the stadium side. So all stuff happening. They're down there, breaking ground on those things. We've got the funding that we need for the bridge. And what that'll do is it'll take it from the one side of the river to the other. Mm-hmm. And then all of the funds that we are using are the incremental revenue that we've got from the state. And what that does is it's all for infrastructure. So bike path, stormwater. We're treating the stormwater that's still running into the river that's not been treated. So all of those things. We have parks, green space. So public are going to have access all along that riverfront from the boat from the pier to the other side of the river. And then the private development coming is there's two different developers on the same side, and one is doing 350 units, and that'll be market rate with a little bit of retail. Mm-hmm. And then the other developer is doing about 70 units, which is going to be the affordable units, and that's with Penrose. So it's going to be that mixed use, mixed price range, and public access for everyone.
So looking ahead, what are your top priorities if you're reelected?
You know, I said, you got to look back at a little bit. I keep saying where we are. So, you know, proudest of all the accomplishments we have, going from bankruptcy into investment in schools, but we need to do more. Mm-hmm. So one of the biggest focuses naturally on education. We've invested a lot of time and energy. You know, the city has a limited role in the schools. Mm-hmm. But having said that, it's about financing the schools. We've been able to build, 2 new elementary schools. We've revamped 4 or 5 others in investment, and we got the brand new high school coming. Mm-hmm. Now we need to start putting those dollars and shifting them into measurements for the education system. That's important. We have a great superintendent, and we're already making those changes with him, and he's investing in there. So that's the important thing. The day-to-day stuff, and I tell people important, it's the, you know, your bread and butter. Mm-hmm. You know, you still have to make sure that the trash is picked up or your streets are plowed. Mm-hmm. You know, with the growth of the city, we're going to have to start doing a little more hiring for the city as well, because with the growth comes responsibility, and we're trying to balance that. We've got hardworking men and women in the city. So, but the biggest thing, you know, you talk about is how do I help people stay affordable, make sure that it's affordable here? How do we bring new tax revenue in so we don't have to tax the residents all the time? That's the problem, you know, because of so we're growing that tax base is really important. Even people don't understand it sometimes, but it's so important to bring in new revenue.
This has been one of the most common questions that we've received. A lot of conversation on our Facebook group and page. Yep. The quality of life complaints we hear, many residents feel the rodent problem has gotten worse over the past several years. Why do you think that is?
Some of it is, right? So the rodent problem is exasperated everywhere. We have a responsibility. It's a quality of life issue, and we're doing more and more to try to control that. We're doing the bait stations. Mm-hmm. We have more environmental inspectors out there. We also have outside professionals coming in. I think some of it is it's not just the government alone to fix it. It's also about the people and how they keep their properties. That's a challenge as well. If you think about all of the construction that's happening over McCoy, you know, there are protections that are put in. There are, the companies who are doing the construction are responsible for, you know, the bait control and the rat control. Mm-hmm. And they do those things and they're held accountable. But there's so much activity there now, they're all going somewhere. And what we've learned is that we need to focus in on, you know, abandoned properties. We have very little of those, so we try to come up with a nucleus. You know, we're out there, we're doing the bait. You know, the state just changed how going forward in March of next year, the type of bait, and the chemicals that you use. You have to use the non-toxic stuff. So anyway, having said all of that, it's important. We know it's an issue. Like every other community, you know, I have great relationships with other mayors and town managers, and we share information with the state. There's value to that. So I think, you know, I wish there was one answer in saying, okay, but I think people, if they could, you know, if they see their neighbors, and it's hard sometimes. I don't want you to call them, you know, tattletale for a minute, but, you know, usually the rodents stay within 200 feet of their food source. And that's the challenge. So it's trying to identify all those food sources. If we don't, you know, we don't have inspectors to go out every house every year. We're limited on that. But I think knowing it's a focus, we're doing everything we can, plus a little more.
Has there been any consideration to using birth control, rodent birth control, implementing that?
They do currently use that at a minimal basis. So, and don't ask me what it's called. I probably should know. but absolutely, they're already doing that to some degree. But it's trying to control it. And if the food source is really the main issue.
Another topic that's generated a lot of conversations and questions from the residents and folks that follow our Facebook page and group. The proposal to place a hybrid school committee on the ballot sparked considerable debate, particularly because many residents felt the process moved too quickly. Yeah. Looking back, do you think the process could have been handled differently?
Yeah, the council president and I had this conversation. The council felt very adamant. There's a lack of trust you hear in the community from some of the schools And there was a lack of management, if you will, on the finances from some of the school committees. So I think that sparked the heavy interest or the quickness of it. We've had many discussions before. We had charter reviews. We've been out talking about it. So it's not a new subject. I think that, and the hybrid that they propose might not be exactly what it should be. So I think absolutely there should be, and there will be, both myself and the council president talked it over, pulled it back saying, let's do the right thing here. Let's make sure people feel comfortable. But I do think it'll come back up at some point in time. I'm open to the changes. I think that a school committee still has to remain more under control of the taxpayers. But the challenge that we all have, and we've seen this in the last few years here, is that the council and the mayor have absolutely no, other than passing the budget saying, here's your money, and we've given them year after year, given them increases. This year alone was about $1 million. And so we give them the dollars, and then sometimes we don't have enough, or we're not investing in it right. And you don't have that give and take. We do have it now with this superintendent, so we feel a lot better. So absolutely, that everything we need to do has to be transparent.
What role do you believe the mayor should play in shaping the education policy while respecting the school committee's independence?
Yeah. So what I would hope to see, and we've done this before, this is why, other than the last 4 years or so, and separate the new superintendent, we had a great working relationship, the council, the school committee, and the mayor's office. And we had some school committee members previous, again, not necessarily currently. They are out, they had personal agendas. So you really have no input. They didn't put the money where it is. So you can voice your concern, but you have no control over it. RIDE and the state set all the guidelines. School committee is autonomous and has autonomy to do what they do. It's really building that relationship with the school committee and that trust, right? It's building value. When I came in, as an example, the council was fighting with the previous administration, we brought everybody together. It took time but we had 9 years of success, and you saw the growth in that. And unfortunately, there were some members on the school committee who just happened to be running my opponent's campaign, who went out on their own, right? And they didn't do what was necessarily right for the district. They hired the wrong people, and that creates the issue. So I think that's where the tension comes from. We had a meeting with the teachers union. They're all doing endorsements, and they have great leadership there, but it has to be good leadership all around.
So in my interview with Adam Grebien, he spoke of at times there are committee members with a committee made up of a majority of one district. And he spoke of maybe implementing a process where the voters from each ward chooses a committee member. So it would kind of balance out instead of having several members from one district. So that's something you think of? I mean, in implementing a hybrid school committee as well.
I think there are options out there. I find it interesting that my opponent is saying that. He come out both times and fought against the change, and now he wants to change. So sometimes there's political rhetoric that happens. But absolutely, I think that we have to have a better system, or whether you do it by district, whether you continue to do it citywide. But I do think that the council and the mayor have to have some form of involvement.
Is this more like oversight?
Yeah, I think it's more of a partnership if you look at it, right? So that way there, when you have a good school committee and you have a good superintendent, and again, we have one now, and prior to 4 years prior, we didn't, but prior to that, is you can have those, right? You need leaders, you need people committed to the district, not with selfish interests, that are willing to work together and compromise. And it's a give and take. Prior to the superintendent, right? 4 years we've had, because of lack of leadership on the school committee. And again, I say not this committee, previous committees, there was no leadership. And so the schools were failing, right? We have some schools that are below average. That's not acceptable, but we have no input, right? They get the mayor, council, residents, mind your own business, right? It's the superintendent and the school committee. So that's why I think there has to be that working relationship.
Public safety continues to rank among residents' top concerns. What do you believe has improved in public safety during your administration?
So there are a lot of things that improved. I try to bring everybody back. There was no investment in equipment and technology. And the biggest thing, and what people tend to forget, is the finances are so important in bringing our bond rating up from junk, because we're able to borrow at less cost for the taxpayers. It's about saving them money. So we come in, there was a city potentially being taken over by the state, investment that was lacking, and times are different. So I don't want to judge anybody, but what has changed is, first, we put money into our police. We've put money into our fire. We've spent millions of dollars in investing in equipment. We have brand new equipment, and, the fire equipment alone, I can buy quite a few cars for the price of $1 million piece of equipment. So we've invested in those. We've invested in equipment, invested in technology, invested in the police. It's a political season, so you might see things that are not true that come out a little bit more, and it's that time of season. But truly, we've invested in this. One of the biggest things that I'm excited about going forward is we're going to be building, we started talking about building a public safety complex, but because of all the bonds, the cost that we have on the schools, we're going to build a new police department, and then we're going to upgrade another one of the fire stations and put the fire offices and the upstairs. A state-of-the-art facility over in District 1 that have been closed for years, our fire station, District 5 station was. Yeah. And so we're doing those investments. And so I think, those are the things that we have to do. We invest in our people, we invest in our leaders, and we invest in equipment.
So we're also hearing about the challenges within the Pawtucket Fire Department. The department and your administration has experienced some turmoil over the past few years. Looking back, is there anything you would have handled differently, and what specific steps would you take over the next couple of years to improve the relationship within the city's department?
So first, I want to start by saying a lot of great, all the men and women, they're hard workers. They're running to buildings when we're running out, and they save lives. And it's a dangerous job, so I respect that. So what happens, though, is the folks that I talk to, the rank and file, this is really an executive board, more of a president issue than it is the union. So, they speak for, the top union speaks for all the members. It's not, even though they're saying that. So morale is at its lowest because of lack of leadership on the union side. And so it tends to come over. And unfortunately, it tends to become political. So that's the other piece, right? But at the end of the day, I'm very proud of the relationship that we have with the fire department overall. Right now, the president has the issue. He is endorsed my opponent for personal reasons and selfish reasons that he can answer for. But I can tell you that most of the stuff is nonsense that we're dealing with, and we're investing in that. So it's not everybody. It's a select few that control it. But I can tell you that if you look at all of the facilities, they're all up to, there are a couple that are older. We're investing in them. They have the best contract. They just came to us and they wanted to switch to 24-hour shifts, and being one of the only cities that hadn't gone from a 12-hour shift to a 24, just finally got it approved.
Flock safety cameras. Pawtucket has implemented the flock safety cameras. The supporters believe the value is a valuable crime-fighting tool. While others, and I'd say including me, have raised concerns about privacy, transparency, and the lack of public input. How do you balance those competing interests?
So fair. At the beginning, when we started this process, and we had gone with the city council, had the concerns. So we were out in public answering those questions. And I understand both sides. I can tell you, though, that privacy, unless somebody comes in that hacks, we don't share anything. Right? We don't send anything. I know the big fear right now is everything about ICE. We are a community that protects our own. We're not sharing information. The technology is there. So I always want to say if somebody hacks in, I don't know enough that, control that, but we are not using it for other than, tracking of the license plates for those thefts. So I am comfortable and confident we have a good policy in place.
You talked about the data being protected. How is it protected? And should residents receive public reports showing how often the cameras are used and how effective they've been? And also, you said that the data is not shared. If it is shared, will the public be notified of who the data is being shared with?
Fair question. So the sharing of it does happen. So I want, like, between communities when you're trying to track, right? But it's not shared for anything other than that specific concern. They're not sharing the information so they get, to get to know who Sean is, those type of things. So that's protected. The transparency of it, absolutely. We should be as transparent as we can. It's, that people have rights too. So you got to be careful on as to what to do. I think the General Assembly at some point as they govern the cameras. We'll start governing that. I think that we should be doing anything we can to put people at ease to know that it is. So as much as we can be transparent, and there might be some best practices out there, I have the chief looking at it because it's becoming more of an issue now as it does. But we want to make sure that people are comfortable with it. And when we say it, we want to be able to share it with them too.
Several major projects have taken place during your administration. What do you consider your biggest economic development so far?
It's really about, when I say this, the stadium was, one of the biggest private partnerships and private investment in the community. So from dollars and cents and from sexy, it's bringing people into the community. But it really is an example. We just opened up Dexter Street Commons, a private 150 units. 20% are affordable and market rate. So those are really where it makes it's good to bring in the dollars, but also the balance. So I think the biggest economic that excites me is going to be when the waterfront is done. That's one of the many reasons that I'm running. I want to keep that consistency. Pawtucket's been moving forward, and I want to continue that. But I think that would be where public access, we're finally getting the bike pass invested. So the stuff that many have talked about for years, we are now getting done.
Looking back over your years as mayor, is there one decision you wish you could do over?
There's always a few. I think one of the hardest things is when you're dealing with public safety and folks that have tragedies, and there are things you can do better. Sometimes we've been known to be the police department, not so comforting, because of the process. I think we've moved far ahead of where we were 16 years ago. And so there's always certain things you can do better. Probably more than one that I would go back to, but they've also made me a better leader, a more compassionate leader at times.
All right, a little fun here, some quick questions. Yeah. Favorite place in Pawtucket?
Other than my house that I don't get there most of the time, no, in my family. So there are a lot of good things. I said, I'm going to take the political answer one and say there are a lot of great restaurants, a lot of great taverns, a lot of great breweries. So there are, what I like most about it, and maybe not so much one, is the cultural diverse. I can go out and have Cape Verdean food tonight, have Colombian food tomorrow, or maybe in the same day. You can go out to the small breakfast restaurants. And so we have so much flavor. But I do I'll always stay Pawtucket, local, and my wife and I will fight over which ones. But probably one of most of the staples when we go to Spumoni's because we're close. So yeah.
Yes, I remember when I could eat things like
yes, me too.
All right, we touched on this a little bit, but biggest lessons you've learned as a mayor.
Trying to be humble, right? Don't forget where you came from. You have to balance that. I've seen too many people think that they're bigger than they are. I joke around with folks. I try to keep myself at that. When they call me mayor, I'm saying, no, it's Don, right? I make the joke until my wife calls me mayor, nobody else has to. But there are a lot of lessons. People matter. Sometimes when you're balancing protecting the residents and their interests, sometimes it's conflicting, because you can't put as much money you'd like to in certain contractual obligations, and you have to pick and choose because there's only so much money to go around. So I think that, remember that people matter, the residents and the employees. Don't take advantage of them, and just treat people how you want to be treated.
Biggest challenge facing Pawtucket?
I think there's one, and we talked a little bit about it, and one that I'm focusing on, like I said, we've got the finances in place, we're much better. We've got a solid community moving forward. The quality of life is increasing, it's getting better as well. I think it really is the schools. And no matter what form of elected, appointed, a hybrid, whatever that is the focus now needs to be supporting the superintendent, making sure that he has all the tools to do that job. He's inherited some failing schools, and that's a challenge because education is the most important service that we provide. And I say this as mayor, even though they don't control it, right? That's the hard part. I don't mean control it in a bad way, but how do we provide its money? So I think that's where the focus is always going to be. Small businesses are important, and we're out there. We've got a commerce department that does an excellent job. They're out there and they support the small businesses. We're very fortunate through COVID. After COVID, A lot of the business survived, but then there was a lot of money that was able to put back on the streets. We were able to invest in those businesses. So there's a lot. And then the other thing that's really important is the people. It's listening to everybody, but not everybody, trying to listen to everybody, because you're not going to talk to everybody and understand what's the most important priority.
Pizza strips or pizza chips?
Strips.
Final question.
Yeah.
If re-elected, by the end of your term, what do you hope Pawtucket residents can point to and say, this is better because Donald Grebien was re-elected mayor?
My hope is that they're already saying that in a lot of ways because of all the improvements. Another 2 years is, we've got so many good things. It's making sure they get through to the end. I want to make sure the high school gets done and we don't change paths. I want to see all the development around the water. And it really is, as much as, you put it in that context, it isn't about me. It used to be the joke, right? I come in and, the older politicians, old school, they wanted their name on the recycle, right? To get their name. It's not about me.
Or have your name on a coin.
Yeah. Right? But I do think I just want to be making sure, and I feel comfortable that we've done a good job and we need to do more, that I've left it in a better place. And I truly believe that people will see that.
Well, Mr. Mayor, it's been a pleasure. I thank you so much.